Welcome to our video on acing your firmware engineer interview. Today, we're diving into some key questions you might face and how best to tackle them. Let's kick things off with a scenario you're likely familiar with: handling tricky bugs in firmware projects. Can you tell me about a time you faced a challenging bug in a firmware project and how you managed to fix it? This question is all about seeing your problem-solving skills in action. Interviewers want to know how you approach challenges and find solutions. Here are some pointers to help you structure your answer. Pick a specific project example where you successfully resolved a bug. Describe the bug and its impact on the system clearly. Walk through the steps you took to uncover the root cause. Explain the solution you implemented to fix the issue. Share any lessons you learned and how they improved your future work. Now, let's listen to an example answer to see how it all comes together.
In my last project, I came across a bug causing intermittent firmware crashes. To tackle this, I reviewed the logs and used debugging tools, eventually pinpointing a race condition. By implementing mutexes for better resource management, I resolved the issue and boosted system stability. This taught me the critical importance of ensuring thread safety in firmware development.
By the way, we're only covering a handful of questions in this video, but I've prepared a free PDF with all 30 top interview questions for Firmware Engineer. It also includes example answers and tips to help you prepare with confidence. The download link is just below. Can you share an experience where you worked on a firmware project as part of a team? What was your role and how did you contribute? Interviewers ask this to gauge your teamwork skills and how you fit into collaborative environments. Let's go over some tips to help you craft a strong response. Choose a project that clearly demonstrates your teamwork experience. Define your role and responsibilities within the team. Highlight your specific contributions to the project. Discuss any challenges you faced and how you helped overcome them. Mention the successful outcomes achieved by the project. Here's a sample answer that illustrates these points.
In a previous job, I was part of a team working on firmware for an IoT device. My responsibility was to implement the communication protocol. By designing efficient algorithms, I was able to reduce communication latency. We encountered connectivity challenges, and I improved error handling in our code to address them. Our efforts culminated in a successful product launch with reliable performance.
Have you ever had a disagreement with a team member over a design decision during a firmware project? How did you resolve the conflict? This question assesses your conflict resolution skills and your ability to work through disagreements constructively. Consider these strategies when forming your answer. Identify the specific design decision that was debated. Clearly explain your reasoning behind the disagreement. Describe how you discussed and collaborated with your team member. Talk about the outcome and any compromises made. Reflect on the lessons you learned from the experience. Let's look at an example answer to see how these elements play out.
In a recent project, I disagreed with a colleague about using interrupt-driven programming over polling. Believing interrupts were more efficient, I shared benchmark data during our discussion. We reached a middle ground by adopting a hybrid approach that addressed both our concerns.
Imagine a firmware update has bricked a device. How would you go about troubleshooting and fixing the problem? This situational question tests your technical troubleshooting skills and how you handle high-pressure situations. Here are some steps to consider when answering this question. Check if the device can enter recovery mode or use a bootloader. Look for any logs or error messages from the update process. Try restoring the previous firmware version if feasible. Use debugging tools to connect to the device for diagnosis. Consult documentation for common firmware update errors. Let's hear an example to illustrate a thoughtful approach to this scenario.
The first step would be to see if the device can enter recovery mode, potentially allowing a rollback to the previous firmware. If that's not possible, I'd connect a debugger to the device to check for error messages, which could help identify the root issue.
With limited memory and processing power, How would you optimize firmware for a critical application? This question explores your ability to work within constraints and optimize efficiently. Consider these guidelines when crafting your response. Analyze the memory and CPU constraints of the device. Identify and remove any non-essential features. Use efficient data structures and algorithms to conserve resources. Implement a real-time operating system to prioritize critical tasks. Profile and measure performance to pinpoint and optimize bottlenecks. Here's an example of how you might approach this challenge.
I'd start by evaluating the device's memory and CPU capabilities. Removing unnecessary features is key, along with using lightweight data structures. Profiling the firmware helps identify performance bottlenecks, allowing for more targeted optimizations to ensure the application runs smoothly.
Before we wrap up, remember you can get all 30 questions, example answers, and step-by-step tips in a handy PDF. Totally free. Just grab it below.